Matt Barry from the Bruins Benders Podcast joining us now, also writing for Inside the Rink, which is where I've been following a lot of this Jeremy Swayman news. And Matt, it has been a long summer of intrigue. The NHL I always find so interesting. NBA, it feels like that free agency buzz kind of goes for like a month. In the NHL, it's like 3 days. And then you're kind of done. And we're getting ready in a few weeks for training camp. So how's your summer been? Did you get to do the Bruins Fan Fest? I know they were up there in Lewiston.
I didn't. I did go to the Portland one.
Oh, gotcha.
A couple of years ago, I think it was at Hadlock. Met Matt Grzelcyk, met some people there. It's a great event. I wasn't able to get to Lewiston, but yeah, it's a great event for the fans, and they usually have a few. I saw in Lowell, I think it was, that Matt Poitras was there, and so it's really cool for fans to be able to get in touch with players. It has been This is always a long stretch. Right in August here is always a dead time when nothing really goes on. And you're right. The free agency comes in like a buzzsaw, and then all of a sudden it kind of dies off. And now you're just waiting for, rookie camp, and that should be in a couple of weeks, and then the actual training camp, and then it gets going. So right now, it's pretty dead, and that's why you get these Swayman things, and you get these rumors, and people are just bored and need some material.
And speaking of that, why don't we jump right in? Because there is one free agent, restricted free agent, for the Bruins still out there, and that is Jeremy Swayman. And it seemed like a slam dunk, especially after the Ullmark trade, that this was going to get done quickly. It is not. Maybe not cause for concern yet, but are you surprised that this deal hasn't gotten done yet as we sit in the last week of August here?
You know what? I'm not. And I've said this on the podcast before. Jeremy Swayman was more upset about the arbitration deal last year than people really want to give it credit for. I mean, he was irritated, and he was upset, and he didn't like that whole scenario. Now, it wasn't the Bruins' fault per se, in that they didn't have cap space to give him what he wanted, so they kind of had to kick the can down the road a little bit. But he took it as I didn't like that process, because in arbitration, when you get with a player in front of them, you're telling them all the things that they're bad at.
Yeah, tell them
all
why
the
they suck.
weaknesses they have to bring the value down. I mean, that's what it's about. It's about like being in marriage counseling, when you're bringing out all the dirty laundry. Like that's kind of what it is, and that was a problem for Swayman. So I thought that he'd play some hardball, and he has. And from what Rich Keefe said on the Jones and Keefe show on EEI yesterday, which really exploded, was that the rumor is that he's asking for $10 million a year, which is, Vasilevsky money, which is Bobrovsky money, Carey Price money. It's way up there toward the top. So now where that number falls, Bruins can't do $10 million unless they move people around. They don't have that kind of cap space. I don't think they'll do $10 million, but this could go into training camp. There could be a holdout situation here for sure.
All right, so follow up 2 questions, because you're referencing the one that's buzzed all around, the $10 million. So first question from me to you is, do you believe that? Do you see where he's asking to be one of the highest paid goalies in the league, or do you think that's something coming from the Bruins to maybe get the fan base on their side a little bit?
Well, that's the good point, is that people were mentioning that maybe Sweeney and the management were kind of putting that out there to tell fans, hey, this is why we're not doing it. I think that Swayman, judging by his agent, who's had Johnny Gaudreau and and William Nylander, other players who have held out before, and he advises players to hold out for the most money. So that's a tough negotiation. I do think that Swayman probably went high, probably went around there, whether it's 10 or whatever. It's certainly more than the Bruins are willing to give. So I can't see a scenario where he asked for 8 and it's taken this long. He must have asked for something higher, or they would have come to some sort of agreement, because I could see the Bruins giving him 8, but 10 is sort of out of the ballpark. So now I think that it would have to be something high for it not to be done by now. So I think there might be some truth to it. Whether it's 10, I don't know the exact number, but it's certainly on the high end.
That's a good point. You know, we heard a lot of discourse over the summer of, well, Swayman's got to only be asking for 8 or 8.5, and I'll bet the Bruins are trying to get 7.75, and it was like that seemed just a little too low for today's negotiating tools. And so, follow-up question to you: we talked about the guys who were in that ballpark at that position getting that AAV. Is Jeremy Swayman worth $10 million a year?
No, I don't think he is. I think he's probably worth more of the 7.5 to 8. You know, there's a couple of factors here. One is that what the league has said is that the salary cap is going to go up pretty exponentially here, like high, like 20 million more than it is now. So I think that players and agents are forecasting that, and I think it's making negotiations a little stickier there. Like Jeremy Swayman's never played a full season. He's played half seasons. You know, he had a great playoff round against Toronto, and then he played very well against Florida. So there's some signs there. He was a Hobey Baker finalist. I mean, this guy just didn't come from nowhere. I mean, he's always been a good goalie at every level. So he's 25. I mean, there's a lot going for him there, and I certainly think he's very good. And I also like his chutzpah, kind of his makeup. Like he showed some signs there where he had a lot of confidence and he had kind of an edge to him that people I don't think had seen before. So I like the whole goalie makeup he has as well. So I would say 7.5 to 8 would be fair. But I don't think he's worth 10. He hasn't won a cup. He's won one playoff series. Like, I don't think he's there yet. But if you're forecasting what he could be, and that's a big if. But if you're forecasting that, then he's certainly in the 8 range. I think 8 is fair.
And I will guarantee he is going to play more games than Carey Price is this year. So there you go. I mean, unless this holdout goes the whole season, he's probably going to play more than Carey Price. True. And it's a good point about the salary cap, because that's something that has been brought up in the Zadorov and Lindholm deals, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I know another one that you've been talking about on the podcast for, a couple months now since it's happened, the Ullmark trade. We all knew this negotiation was going to be coming with Jeremy Swayman, and that it could be high. I think $10 million is taking a lot of people, off guard, but we knew it was going to be pretty good money for a goaltender in this negotiation. So were you surprised to see the Bruins pull the trigger on a Linus Ullmark trade before the draft, knowing that these negotiations were coming and knowing that Swayman was irritated from last year?
Well, I thought they should have. I thought they should have moved him, but I was surprised at the return some. I was also surprised that they didn't really save a ton of money. They brought in Korpisalo. They have a little bit of money in Kastelik. Like, they didn't save a ton of money there, $1.5 million or so. Yeah. Like, I thought if they would to trade him, they would trade him and get all that money. Trade him for prospects or draft picks and have all that money freed up. That would make more sense with the timing of it. So really, they didn't put themselves in any more position to give Swayman more money. So now, of course, in hindsight, it looks like they gave all the leverage to Swayman by trading Ullmark away. But you do have Korpisalo, who's a veteran goalie who hasn't been very good, but the Bruins have developed goalies and they've done a really good job of reclamation projects at goalie. Jaroslav Halak and other goalies that they've done really well with. Bob Asenza is one of the best in the game at coaching goaltenders. So, but I think that I was really kind of surprised at the return and that they didn't position themselves with a salary cap. And now you can question the timing, because now you kind of left it in Swayman's sort of court to determine what the price will be. And again, I just have this feeling that this is going to go into training camp. And if it does, then I'm really concerned about injuries, because with goaltenders, you pull groins, you tweak backs, it's if you're not conditioned to play hockey for a bit and you hold out and then you're thrust into the position, it could really line up to have some nagging injuries because of it.
We are Rogue Media Sports.